In this lesson, we will get an overview of photosynthesis. The lives of nearly every living thing on the surface of the earth are made possible by the sun and the process of photosynthesis. We can see different colors thanks to the different wavelengths of light that the sun emits. We perceive those colors with our eyes, and these colors are known as the visible spectrum. Now, plants gather the sun's energy with light-absorbing molecules called pigments. The plant's principal pigment is chlorophyll, and the two types of chlorophyll found in plants are chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. The chlorophyll in the leaves of the plants are not able to absorb green light very well, though. Instead, they reflect that light, and that's why plants look green to us. Plants also contain red and orange pigments, such as carotene, that absorb light in the blue region of the spectrum. Most of the time, the intense green color of chlorophyll overwhelms the accessory pigments, so we don't really notice them. But as temperatures begin to drop late in the year, chlorophyll molecules break down first, leaving the reds and the oranges of the accessory pigments there for all to see. The beautiful colors of fall in some parts of the country are the result of this very process. In plants, as well as in other photosynthetic eukaryotes, photosynthesis takes place inside of organelles called chloroplasts. So what's so special about chlorophyll that makes it important for photosynthesis? Well, because light is a form of energy, then any compound that absorbs light is actually absorbing energy. Chlorophyll absorbs visible light especially well. In addition, when chlorophyll absorbs light, a large fraction of that light energy is transferred directly to the electrons in the chlorophyll molecule itself. And so by raising the energy levels of these electrons, light energy can produce a steady supply of high energy electrons, which is what makes photosynthesis work. In plants and other photosynthetic eukaryotes, photosynthesis takes place inside of organelles called chloroplasts. Now, chloroplasts contain an abundance of these sac-like photosynthetic membranes called thylakoids. Okay, you see them there on the screen. Thylakoids are interconnected and they're arranged in stacks known as grana. Actually, the singular form is granum, and the plural form is grana. Pigments, like chlorophyll, they're located in the thylakoid membranes. And we see the thylakoid membranes right there. And then there's a fluid portion of the chloroplast outside of the thylakoids known as the stroma. Now, the stroma, I like to think of it kind of like the cytoplasm in the cell, but inside of the chloroplast, we don't call it cytoplasm, we call it stroma. All right, let's talk about high energy electrons. All right, let's think about the high energy electron as being similar to a hot coal. And like a pan that would be used to carry those hot coals, NADP plus carries pairs of electrons as well as an H plus ion from place to place. So plant cells treat high energy electrons in much the same way. Instead of a pan, though, they use electron carriers to transport those high energy electrons from chlorophyll to the other molecules. So NADP plus is a carrier molecule that transports pairs of electrons along with that H plus ion I mentioned before. And it does this in photosynthetic organisms. And this is similar to how an oven mitt is used to transport a hot object like a baked potato. So in the conversion of NADP plus into NADPH, what happens to the energy absorbed by chlorophyll from sunlight? Well, the conversion of NADP plus to NADPH traps the energy of sunlight in chemical form. So the NADP plus accepts and then holds on to those two high energy electrons along with that hydrogen ion, the H plus. So that's what converts the NADP plus into NADPH. The conversion of NADP plus into NADPH is one way in which some of the energy of sunlight can be trapped in chemical form. So photosynthesis, as it says, uses the energy of sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into high energy sugars and oxygen products. So what we have here on the board is what we call the photosynthesis formula. And so we see it's carbon dioxide plus water with some light energy, which produces sugars and oxygen. So plants use the sugars then to produce complex carbohydrates like starches and to provide energy for the synthesis of other compounds, including proteins and lipids. So photosynthesis usually produces 6 carbon sugars. I mean by that sugars that have 6 carbons. Usually we see that as C6H12O6. It looks like this when we write it as a formula. Okay, that's the chemical formula of sugar, C6H12O6. That means it has 6 carbons, as I said. It also has 12 hydrogens and 6 oxygens. So we also have carbon dioxide, which you should know is CO2. Maybe you don't know that. Now you do. It's CO2, but there are 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. Water is H2O, and you guys are familiar with water, right? But there's also 6 of those. So those are the reactants, and with some light energy, they can be rearranged. We can rearrange all of these atoms into a sugar, C6H12O6, as well as a bunch of oxygen molecules, oxygen gas molecules, O2. So 6 of those. Now, in order for the chemical equation to be balanced, because all chemical equations have to be balanced, there has to be the same number of atoms that you start with as how many there are when you end. That is because there is a law of nature that states that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So all of the carbon that exists in our atmosphere, in our Earth, is presently here. We're not going to create more carbon. Now, we can rearrange it into different things and mix it with different things, but there's still the same amount of carbon in our system. Okay, we can't destroy it either. We can't we can't delete carbon. Okay, so matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So in order for these to balance, we have to have equal amounts of each atom on each side of the equation. Now, the arrow in the middle is what separates the two sides of the equation. There's no equal sign. It's not exactly math, but it's kind of similar to math, actually. So the total number of carbon, oxygen, and water atoms that exist on each side has to remain the same. Okay, and so let's walk through it real quick. So this tells us there are 6 carbons, because 6 times 1 is 6. And if we look over here, the only carbon we have here is C, and it also has a 6, so that means there's 6 carbons. So we have the same amount of carbons on both sides. Now, oxygen, we have 6 times 2, because there are 2 oxygens in each molecule. There are 6 molecules, so 6 times 2 is 12. Plus, there's 6 more oxygen over here, because 6 times 1 is 6. So 12 plus 6 equals 18. So we have to have 18 molecules of oxygen. And what we find is if we look at this oxygen gas molecule over here, there's 6 of them. There's 2 atoms in each molecule. So 6 times 2 is 12, plus the 6 over here in the sugar, that gives us 18. So our carbons are balanced and our oxygens are balanced. The only thing that's left now is the hydrogen, and there's 2 hydrogens in every water molecule, and there are 6 water molecules used as a reactant. Therefore, there are 12 hydrogen molecules in total, and so when we produce a sugar from that reaction, we see that we have 12 hydrogens. So everything balances from one side to the other. So although the equation for photosynthesis looks kind of simple, there are actually a lot of steps to get from the reactants to those final products. Photosynthesis actually involves 2 sets of reactions. We have the light-dependent reactions. We see those here. And we have the light-independent reactions, which are found on this side. So, what happens to the ATP and NADPH that are produced in the light-dependent reactions? Well, both ATP and NADPH from the light-dependent reactions are used to produce high-energy sugars in the light-independent reactions. So let's look a little closer at the light-dependent reactions. So they use energy from sunlight in order to produce these energy-rich compounds such as ATP. And these reactions take place within the thylakoids, specifically in the thylakoid membranes. And these, of course, are in the chloroplast. Water is also required in these reactions as a source of electrons as well as the hydrogen ions. So we have water going in, and as a byproduct of these reactions, oxygen gets released. So we have oxygen going out. So why is the first set of reactions called the light-dependent reactions? Well, it should be relatively obvious, but if you didn't quite figure that out yet, it's because these reactions require the direct involvement of light. So plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, right? We exhale carbon dioxide and we inhale oxygen. Well, plants absorb carbon dioxide and they release oxygen. So we benefit from plants and plants benefit from us. Okay? So in the light-independent reactions, we need an input of carbon dioxide. So plants are able to complete the process of photosynthesis by producing those carbon-containing sugars as well as some other carbohydrates. So that would be the outcome or the products. So in the light-independent reactions, there's no light required to power these reactions. So the light-independent reactions take place outside of the thylakoids in the stroma, the empty space of the chloroplast. So again, the 2 sets of reactions, they really do work together to capture the energy of sunlight and transform it into these energy-rich compounds like carbohydrates. So what compounds are recycled between these reactions? Well, there's NADPH and NADP+. There's also ATP and ADP. Those are recycled between the light-dependent and light-independent reactions. So what happens if an inhibitor of the light-independent reaction is added to chloroplasts? Well, an inhibitor says that or suggests that it stops processes, right? So a light-dependent reaction is also inhibited because electron acceptors and ADP aren't recycled. So if this recycling of NADPH and NADP plus, or the ADP and ATP gets stymied, gets slowed down, gets stopped, then it's basically going to shut down the entire system.